The hills and uplands of Scotland provide a wide range of benefits to society. These benefits that people derive from nature are known as ecosystem services. They include obvious things such as food, fibre, fuel and water, but also other services such as carbon storage, flood regulation, biodiversity, and cultural services such as recreation, tourism and heritage. At SRUC's Kirkton and Auchtertyre farms, we've been managing the land to improve the value of the ecosystem services by restoring degraded peatland, creating new woodlands, improving habitat for a wide range of plants and animals, and reducing the risk of flooding lower down the catchment. Join me as I take you on a virtual journey across the upper part of the estate to see what we have done. A huge amount of carbon is stored in Scotland's peat bogs, but many of these peatlands are degraded. It is important that these degraded peatlands are restored so that they can once more sequester and store carbon and become functioning peat bog ecosystems rich in biodiversity. At Kirkton and Auchtertyre, we have undertaken some peatland restoration work with funding from the Peatland Action Fund. The restoration involved reprofiling peat erosion features known as peat hags, installing dams to slow down and trap water in eroded gullies, and fencing and re-wetting an area of unvegetated peat to encourage regrowth of the vegetation and stabilisation of the peat surface. Scotland's uplands have a long history of management. Before the arrival of large sheep flocks to the highlands in the 18th century, people would bring their grazing animals to the hill pastures in the summer and stay with them in primitive stone dwellings known as shielings. There are numerous remains of shielings and stone enclosures scattered throughout the estate at Kirkton and Auchtertyre, particularly within Glen Clachan, which means the glen of the stone buildings. The uplands of Scotland used to be much more wooded, but most of this woodland was cleared centuries ago. At Kirkton and Auchtertyre, we have started to restore some of this lost mountain woodland and scrub. 22 years ago, 260 hectares of mountain woodland was planted in Glen Clachan. Over 400,000 native trees were planted, including downy birch, rowan, alder, hazel, willow and Scots pine. The first phase of planting was along the Alt Glen Clachan Gorge. The main purpose of this woodland was to act as a wildlife corridor, linking an area of existing native woodland with the much larger second phase of planting in the upper bowl of the glen. The gorge woodland has a wide variety of birds, plants and invertebrates, many of which were not present before the woodland was planted. In the upper gorge, the trees and bushes are more widely spaced on the steep slopes, and they are not as tall as lower down the gorge. There are many species of plant and insects within the woodland, including northern bedstraw, grass of Parnassus, and the Scotch Argus butterfly, whose caterpillars feed on the abundant purple moorgrass. Birds of scrubland are also present, including species such as whinchat and stonechat. The main mountain woodland planting was carried out in two large fenced enclosures between 350 and 600 metres in altitude, one on the southwest flank of Ben Hallam and the other in the main bowl of the glen. The trees and shrubs in the mountain woodland are short in stature and widely spaced due to the harsh environmental conditions at this altitude. The ground vegetation has changed markedly since the woodland fences were erected and the sheep and deer excluded. The grassland vegetation has changed to one dominated by dwarf shrubs such as heather, cross-leaved heath and cowberry, and tall herb and woodland species such as wood anemone now flower abundantly. The habitat that has been created is also good for common lizards, frogs, a range of bird species, and invertebrates like the emperor moth and northern egger moth. The removal of grazing and trampling by sheep and deer has also allowed areas of degraded bog to restore naturally, with sphagnum moss and other bog plants returning. At the northern end of the farm is a mountain called Cam Craig, which is a protected site, designated because of its important alpine flora. The base-rich soils in this area have allowed a diverse range of alpine plants to grow, including some nationally rare and scarce species. This area is open to grazing by sheep and deer, and the grazing maintains the short, species-rich grassland in which many of the alpine herbs grow. Other alpine plants are restricted to cliff ledges, where the grazing animals cannot reach. The hills and uplands form over 70% of Scotland's land area, and these upland areas, like Kirkton and Auchtertyre, are vital in our quest to meet the twin challenges of climate change and biodiversity loss. We hope you have enjoyed this journey across the hill ground of Kirkton and Auchtertyre. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask the SRUC staff.